Koopa Moogles, TheShwantz27 here with another Coliseum 2 recap. This time we're in the fourth round of the tournament, which featured the Locke's Knife flag set. Starting with Locke Always Steal, we had access to several free checks, including the Narsh Weapon Shop, of which the best non-Esper choice had to be an Experience Egg right off the start in the Drewlith versus Locke bout, and the worst choices had to be in the Boo versus Fictus match of a Genji Shield or a Red Cap. But they did get on the good side of the Curse Shield battles with 3, which also happened to Madre and Dr. DT, with Drewlith versus Locke on the opposite end with 14. The Coliseum reward of Auto Haste was alluring, as all but one of our runners obtained that status effect, with the only person who did not obtain it ended up losing their race. 100% random chests, -5 magic power with +5 strength, and pretty crummy shops meant a slower early game, but +10 speed and auto haste meant a quicker mid and ending of the races. With these options in mind, how did the matches fare? Our upper bracket kicked off for Madre versus Dr. DT, with Setzer Lore Natural Magic and Celeste Capture for extra added thievery, and an early Esper from the South Figaro Prisoner that had both Ice and Bolt 3. Both runners took the same loot route and took off the Moogle Charm for grind fights, but after some delicious flan, ran into Intangier, so the charm went back on. Dr. DT hopped into the Phoenix Cave for a Valiant Knife reward, while Madre got 2 more gem boxes to sell as treasure from Albrook and Thamasa. The convergence happened again, this time in World of Ruin Narsh, where they dug an Atma weapon for Madre and a Genji glove for Dr. DT out of the weapon shop to go with a 3-battle Curse Shield, but Dr. DT took a wipe trying to get some grind fights near the heal bucket, and Madre found Katana Soul in the classroom to return to later for that offering. Dr. DT decided to try his luck against the monster in a box and wiped again, while Madre grabbed a gold hairpin from the Coliseum and then headed to the Opera House to kill Leader with an instant death proc, finding Go-Go as their 4th character. Dr. DT went back for revenge on the monster in a box with higher levels, but got money thrown at him for yet another death. However, it was on the 3rd try that he finally got his lock online early with that Valiant Knife and offering. But Madre had already grabbed another Esper from the South Figaro Cave, giving him a 4-character 2 Esper to 3-character 1 Esper lead in progression. 32 minutes and 30 seconds into the seed, Dr. DT killed his first boss at Search the Skies for another Esper, and both runners found themselves in the Magitech factory before long, with both going the distance like a cake song, getting 3 Espers, so it was 4 characters 5 Espers for Madre, and 3 characters 6 Espers for Dr. DT. After getting unceremoniously crushed in Zone Eater, Madre found Sabin, who could use that Atma weapon that we obtained in multiple places. While Madre was getting a 6-character Realm at the bottom of Barren Falls, Dr. DT also grabbed the Illumina from Daryl's tomb and deduced that the only spot that his next character could be was Zone Eater or Kefka at Narsh, so he decided to get scarfed down, while Madre hopped into Kefka's tower early to clear out the middle path with his full team in order to get more levels on his characters without increasing scaling. Dr. DT found the 6-character Edgar at Collapsing House, and that evened up the score. However, Madre had already defeated the 3 Stooges at the Inferno spot, and while he was taking down Atma weapon at the Guardian spot, Dr. DT bought the Tzen Thief Esper, giving him the first progression lead of the race. After defeating Leet River Ultros at the top of the middle path, Madre had his 12 bosses needed for KT Skip, and he decided to go back to square off against Katana Soul for the offering on his Atma weapon user, but Dr. DT needed just 1 more Esper after grabbing one on the Figaro throne. He also got his 9th boss kill on Doom at Barren Falls, but also found a redundant realm, while Madre got yet another Atma weapon at Tritok Cliff. The Tzen Thief Esper was even cheaper in the World of Balance, and as Dr. DT was warping out of Esper Mountain for his go mode, Madre was heading in. However, Madre had already cleared out the middle path, while Dr. DT had the whole Kefka's tower to go. This meant that Madre stepped up to the final battle 6 minutes and 30 seconds ahead. However, he lost Locke to Doomtusk without a Revivify on Tier 2 as Dr. DT loaded into the final fight. As Dr. DT headed into Tier 2, Madre lost to Celeste Calmness on Tier 3, so he's down to just Sabin with Atma weapon offering and Setzer with an Illumina and Pearlwind to heal against Final Kefka. A double Havoc Wing after surviving a Goner would cause a reset for Madre, as he didn't have enough damage to power through, leaving Dr. DT on Tier 3, who used Fenrir to combat Calmness and grabbed the win after Locke's Valiant Knife offering did tons of damage from Fallen 1, 127.57 to 137.48. Season 1 Mega Elixir members Falcon Hit and Green Monkey were given Capture Setzer and Lore Mog, with a sketch Runic Gao at Lone Wolf for Falcon Hit, with Green Monkey getting Sortek Cyan from Phoenix Cave. Falcon Hit then grabbed an Esper from the Zen Thief as well as the Phoenix Cave Cyan, while Green Monkey went to the Narsh Weapon Shop for an Esper. Falcon Hit lowered his party down to 3 to grab a second Esper from the Velt, and grabbed his third Esper from the Narsh Weapon Shop, and both runners decided to grind, with Green Monkey getting more favorable undead enemies, while Falcon Hit's fights lasted longer, but with more progression also offered more XP. Both runners went into the Coliseum getting fixed dice amongst a plethora of good items like a flame shield for Falcon Hit and an economizer, which was actually a lost fight for Green Monkey. Falcon Hit grabbed more progression with an Esper from the Coliseum and headed to the Narsh Mines for the other reward from Lone Wolf, an offering for the fixed dice that destroyed Leader at South Figaro Cave for a 5th Esper, so it was well worth the time trip to get 4 dice rolls instead of 1, while Green Monkey went to Daryl's Tomb with a gold hairpin and Mog's Grand Train lore grabbing a Ragnarok dead check. Green Monkey followed Falcon Hit into Dome of Siege with yet another dead check Behemoth suit, then they diverged with Falcon Hit having access to the Serpent Trench to catch up in levels he was behind on from doing so many free checks to acquire Dan Strago at the end, and Green Monkey got yet another dead check Atma weapon from the first Dream check, then Throw Terra, and an Esper on the throne. After following in Green Monkey's footsteps doing Cyan's Dream, Falcon Hit opted to hop into Kefka's Tower with 7 characters to accrue boss kills, levels, and clear out the middle path early, while Green Monkey was able to catch up on progression with an Esper from the Sealed Gate Cave, and at Welk, Gao at Lone Wolf, but also found some dead checks with Marvel Shoes at Zozo Tower, and yet another Ragnarok with Kefka at Narsh. Falcon Hit also ran into Magimaster at the Poltergeist spot with his full party at a lower scaling that was highly beneficial to him, and was still ahead of progression in spite of his dip into Kefka's Tower because of the dead checks that Green Monkey had run into. Green Monkey finally grabbed the Colin Esper, an Esper at Mobliz, and the Tzen Thief Esper for Go Mode, while Falcon Hit walked back through Kefka's Tower, but was able to take down the side statues prior to Green Monkey hopping into the statue skip. Green Monkey was able to dispose of Magimaster after reconfiguring the equipment to Atma Weapon Offering and Paladin Shield, but Falcon Hit was already moving on to Tier 3, which did get a bit dicey after an opening W win took everyone down to HP in the hundreds, but then Setzer's fixed dice jump one-shot girl. After using a Mega Elixir to heal up the party, he used Phantom for Calmness Protection with Sortek Gate to power through with a clutch shield blocked by Cyan. Falcon Hit's round best 121.15 beat Green Monkey's time of 141.29. Ensign Wesley went up against Zenobian with Go-Go and Dance Celeste with a decent water rondo featuring some great single target offensive spells, Elfire, Plasma, and Wump to kick it off. Both runners grabbed Blitz Setzer from the South Figaro Prisoner reward, and Ensign Wesley took the money from looting to purchase Fenrir from the Zen Thief and head into Zone Eater for Stray, while Zenobian started his grind fight outside of the Narsh Bucket, grabbing the Esper Siren from the weapon shop. Runic Sabin was sipping on cocktails at the Colin Inn for Ensign Wesley, giving him 5 characters 2 Espers before even getting off of level 3. After resetting from an early Tentacles at Search the Skies, Zenobian dipped into the Coliseum, finding a Ragnarok upgrade from a flail via a few suplexes, as well as going to the hidden chest in Daryl's Tomb for an experience egg, eventually getting Sortek Edgar from the check while Ensign Wesley was doing his grind session. The auto hits from the Coliseum definitely helped in his Tentacles refight, getting rewarded with an Esper, and Gao is holding up the collapsing house for Ensign Wesley, his 6th character very early in the seed. Zenobian lost out to Chatternook with Ensign Wesley running from difficult mobs on the Velt, eventually getting yet another character Rage Realm and going into Phoenix Cave, yielding Esper at the same time Zenobian was doing Opera House in order to get some levels in a boss fight for Umaro, his 6th character. Both runners ended up back in World of Ruin Narsh, with Zenobian fighting the Storm Dragon from Marvel Shoes, Raiden from Tritok Cliff, and Shote from Yeti Cave after a Vanilla Umaro fight, while Ensign Wesley had to make up some levels with all of the progression he obtained and going into the Coliseum for an upgrade to the fixed dice from the Mithril Shield and the Auto Haste status. Being 37 minutes into the seed with 7 characters, 4 Espers, and 0 boss kills, that trend continued as Ensign Wesley went into Imperial Camp, whereas Zenobian went to Magitech Factory, needing only espers, unfortunately resetting out of the first boss there, Magimaster. After grabbing an esper at Mount Cult, the seed grinded to a halt in terms of progression for both runners, as Zenobian ran into 3 dead checks in a row at Phantom Train Barren Falls, and after refighting Chad at South Figaro Cave, while Ensign Wesley finally decided to take on his first boss of the seed, and he did have Berserk for Magimaster at the Magitech Factory, but it was also a dead check Magus Rod, and then another dead check Marvel Shoes at the second spot before warping out. Finally, there was some light at the end of the tunnel, albeit for Zenobian, he saw Strago at the Figaro engine room, having to get past Poltergeist, and Ensign Wesley got an Esper from the appropriately named Esper Mountain. Ancient Castle yielded an Esper for Zenobian, while Figaro Throne was just a Genji Glove, so he turned to Dezen for Fenrir from the Thief, and Gao followed by Realm on the Veld, having accrued 10 characters at this point, and they were looking pretty crammed playing craps in the lower level of the airship. Thankfully, he ended up getting 2 Espers from Realm's checks, and hit Kefka's Tower at just over the 1 hour 3 minute mark, in spite of getting so much progression, which meant his bosses were going to be much more difficult than Wesley, who only had 7 characters by comparison. Zenobian was able to unlock Kefka's Tower skip at the Guardian spot when Ensign Wesley was just entering the tower, so even with tougher bosses, Zeno's lead was just too large for Wesley to catch up, especially with doing so few bosses, therefore the skip was not an option for him. That allowed Zenobian to move on with a time of 1:23.23 to Ensign Wesley's 1:34.54. In a clash of the underdogs, Taco Mage and 1 Freefit had Terra Blitz and Strago Dance to start off with, along with tons of great treasure, like Fixed Dice, Illumina, Experience Egg, Valiant Knife, Offering Sniper, Gembox, Mega Elixir, a choice of Cat Hood or Snow Muffler from the Weapon Shop, a 176 GP Ragnarok from Dezen Thief, and Pugs from the Classroom Monster in a Box of Steel, 3 Minervas from. As a result, there wasn't much in the Coliseum, but both runners dug out a hero ring and got the auto haste status. Jet Seed, right? Well, unfortunately, the Czechs decided not to play along, giving our runners an Aegis Shield from South Figaro Cave and another Ragnarok from Burning House straight away. Taco Mage did the World of Balance Narsh loop, getting the other reward from the Weapon Shop and validating his seed by suplexing the Ghost Train, along with 2 Espers from Welk and Kefka at Narsh, then Umaro in Phoenix Cave, while 1 Freefits was fighting Umaro in Ebbets Rock. Taco Mage then did the World of Ruin Narsh loop, with access to Yeti Cave from Umaro, getting him 2 more Espers in Fenrir and Ramu, while 1 Freefits was in World of Balance Narsh, getting his 2 Espers, and more importantly, the Train Suplex. This also meant that our next character is either at Mobliz, where Taco Mage went, Leet River, which is where 1 Freefits headed to, or Fanatic's Tower, which had Realm at the bottom. Taco Mage unfortunately had his 2 best characters Baba breathed away, and he reset out of the Ifrit fight, knowing that it was Carbuncle. Meanwhile, 1 Freefits got an Offering dead check from the Leet River, meaning that we had to get some magical spells for Fanatic's Tower, which was sparse with all of the physical offense that we found in the seed. Without any decent spells, Taco Mage was forced to run away during the transition from Ifrit and Shiva, whereas 1 Freefits was just able to throw an Ice Rod at the problem in order to get that Esper reward that taught Ice 3. Thankfully, the boss at the top was only Air Force, because the only offensive spells that we had access to were Fire 2 and Ice 3 and Yeti Smash, although 1 Freefits did have a Thunder Rod that he used. With Realm only having 2 checks, it was Esper Mountain that was chosen by Taco Mage, which gave us Celeste, but 1 Freefits went to World of Ruin Jador for Alzur's Mansion and the Auction House for his last 2 Espers, before knowing that his final character was at Esper Mountain. Taco Mage's next 2 Espers were both in the Magitech Factory, and 1 Freefit was just an Esper Mountain behind. Both runners took out 2 of the other 3 bosses when getting the skip, but Haydn at the Goddess statue was the final hurdle for both of our runners, using the same Realm Umaro party, with Taco Mage taking a wipe to Wombat and Poison on the first try, then eating an Ultima and nearly dying at 8 HP for Realm before using Sword Tech 5 to gain that missing HP, and then 1 Freefits got his Realm zombied, and then Umaro was killed, forcing a reset. Since 1 Freefits forgot to save in Kefka's Tower, he had to refight the previous bosses, while Taco Mage finally took down Haydn, then Tentacles to put him 50 seconds ahead of 1 Freefits, starting the final battle. Taco Mage took down Tier 1 quickly, while one Freefit used Float to prevent the Quake death counter since his party had multiple offering users. Neither one of our runners had instant death nor mute, so Tier 2 was a much longer fight, with Taco Mage keeping his lead and having access to Fenrir meant no worries with Calmness as he took the win with a 1:28:43 time in this very linear seed that bottlenecked into a very difficult Fanatics tower check without much magic. The next match, Boo against Fictus, started with Lore Cyan and GP Rain Celeste, as both runners getting a 3 battle curse shield and Ficta electing to steal a Mega Elixir from the Master Pug and Monster in a Box, however had an awful choice of Genji Shield or Red Cap in the Norse Weapon Shop. Both runners would grab Golem from Phoenix Cave and control Strega from the South Figaro Prisoner check, as well as Ficta grabbing a second Esper from Tzen Thief. Boo wanted a Ragnarok trade for Tincture, but took a wipe at first without getting any decent loot and chests from their route. An Economizer from Doma Siege allowed Boo to have multiple casts of Tre Fuego at early levels against Umaro and Cyan's Dream, while Ficta took on Ultros and Chupon after grinding at the South Figaro Cave. Ficta did not have the tinctures for the Coliseum, but traded some rename cards for a Thunder Shield and managed to run into Siegfried for an Ice Shield, which is never a fun fight in the Coliseum, while Boo got another dead check gem box followed by a Rage X Magic Gal and an Esper from the Dream. Both runners turned to Mount Zozo, each getting an Experience Egg from killing the dragon and an Esper. Boo went to Magitech Factory first, grabbing 2 Espers before taking a ride on the minecart, as Ficta followed behind, just starting with that 3-part check. Both ran into a Katana Soul on the minecart to get an offering for Sniper and money for Flame Shields to use with Merton strats, but they wouldn't work on Poltergeist for the 3rd Esper at the end of the factory, which gave both of our runners struggles, especially Ficta, having only Locke survive the fight. Boo was the first to grab his 6-character Shadow from Fanatics Tower, and then jump Mog from Gal Manor before heading into Kefka's Tower, as Ficta was fighting Ultros at the top of Fanatics. Ficta caught up a bit, however, both runners were simultaneously fighting Chatternook at the Inferno spot. Ficta decided to take on an additional Skull Dragon for extra levels, as Boo continued with the climb, which gave him a lead. However, Ficta was able to peek the Magi Master at the Goddess statue and Boo did not. This meant that Boo had a hard-fought battle using Flare, while Ficta used Quick with Merton before Magi Master could use Wall Change by pausing the ATB. However, Ficta was still behind by about 4 minutes, even though they did the same checks, due to getting started a bit later than Boo in the seed, and the differences in party composition without a Ragnarok and not having any instant death spells, since Boo bought a Curse Ring for X-Zone to speed up Tier 1 and Tier 2, although Ficta did use the Atma Weapon Steal from Girl to his advantage during Tier 3, Boo was still able to take home the win, 131.54 to 133.48. The Battle of the Jays, Jexvarok versus Jackamus, gave us Sabin Natural Magic Sword Tech and Umaro, and both runners curiously chose the Ragnarok Sword over the Siren Esper at the Norse Weapon Shop for early game offense. Jack then grabbed Dan Setzer with Landslide in the first slot from the Collapsing House and a Minerva from the Tzen Thief, while Jexvarox hopped into Phoenix Cave from Madwin. Jackamus barely survived the Search the Sky spot with only Umaro for another Esper and grabbed Rage Terror from Colin Jinin, while Jexvarok did his looting, finding a Valiant Knife in the South Figaro basement. After doing some grind fights in the South Figaro Cave, Jackamus ran into a Magi Master, relying on Umaro's Body Slam, Ragnarok Flare procs when they actually hit, and Dispatch for damage, eventually needing to reset, losing all of those levels in that time. Meanwhile, Jexvarok got a Cat Hood from the Coliseum and Auto Haste. He grabbed 2 more Espers from Imperial Camp and Barren Falls, while Jack did his grinding again, prior to taking on number 128 at the Welk spot to both grab the Esper from that check and the Siren that he left behind at the beginning of the game. Jexvarok grabbed Control Runic Gal from Phantom Train, who could only learn Flare as a damage-inflicting spell from the 3 Espers that he currently possessed. This would come in handy, however, against the Magi Master fight in the South Figaro Cave for another Esper, while Jack was doing the World of Ruin Narsh loop, getting Illumina from Tritok Cliff and an Esper from Yeti Cave. Jexvarok then picked up his Setzer and grabbed an offering from one of the Monster in a Boxes in Collapsing House for that Valiant Knife. After getting Terra at the inn, he left Strago at Mobliz before doing both Narsh loops for his last 3 espers. Jack opted to get Strago, but only got an Atmo weapon from Ebbets Rock, and Gogo from Zozo doing the Walk of Shame without any ability to warp. Jexfarok decided to go back to Mobliz for those 2 extra bosses to set up for a KT skip after clearing out the middle path, while Jack found Esper number 7 at Mount Kultz. Jack eventually got his final Esper in the Burning House, being able to use the KT skip straight away, ending up just behind Jexfarok, finding a French vanilla goddess at the top of the middle path, who ended up using Goner on Jackamus for a wipe, allowing Jexfarok to get onto the Kefka switches first, 3 minutes ahead of Jack, who lost Sabin to Dread on Tier 1 as Jexfarok was taking on Tier 3, using Quick with his Genji Glove Ragnarok Terra and offering Valiant Knife Locke to give him the victory in spite of being an ultimate of Kefka 125-34 to 128-23. Coliseum 2 Kamish Double Down squared off against GB Matt with Terra Rage along with Umaro, and both runners immediately hopped into Lava Rock checks, with Double Down to the Cave to the Sealed Gate for a Magus Rod and Matt to Phoenix Cave for the Ramu Esper. Double Down grabbed a Valiant Knife from the Coliseum, but ran into Vanilla Doomgaze, with 2 of his characters being level 10, meant an instant reset, thankfully saving right after leaving the Coliseum, while Matt did some grinding prior to taking on the boss in South Figaro Cave, finding Gogo for his 4th character prior to going to the Coliseum and also digging out the Valiant Knife. Double Down took advantage of elemental protections with the Diadalos Rage from Merton to clear out mobs on the Leet River quickly, grabbing his first Esper Unicorn. Matt grabbed an Esper from Tritok Cliff and Setzer from Yeti Cave, padding his lead, while Double Down found yet another dead check Marvel Shoes and Zone Eater. Double Down followed behind while Matt found Celeste as his 6th character at Mobliz, but also had 2 of his characters frozen with Terra's White Dragon Rage against Doom. Double Down's fight was also prolonged, with having Setzer and Gogo remain, which were his 2 weaker characters, and that allowed Matt to grab Jump Sabin at the South Figaro prisoner check and another Esper at Welk to even up that count. However, a wipe to Poltergeist at the first Magitech factory spot, along with Double Down having a Dragon Horn from a chest that Matt did not get, meant that our runners were even in progression at 55 minutes in. Unfortunately, Double Down wasn't able to get value out of the Magitech factory as both of the checks are dead before warping out, while Matt grabbed 2 Espers. After both runners grabbed more Espers at the collapsing House of Phantom Train, they decided to go back to the Doomgaze fight for their final Espers, with Matt getting it first. However, Double Down was at 12 bosses prior to going into Kefka's Tower, so he was able to leap right behind Matt with the Kefka's Tower skip. The next challenge was at the Goddess statue where Magimaster awaited. Matt had Berserk on Celeste, which allowed him to deal with the magic casts, and Double Down's Berserk caster died from the initial onslaught. Matt's Valiant Knife user, however, kept missing from Magimaster's high physical evade. Some Fire 3 spells and Sword Tech pushed Matt through, while Double Down cracked an Ice Shield and used Fire 3 to get to the Kefka switches, only 30 seconds behind Matt. Both ran into trouble at Tier 3 with an opening W wind, and Double Down lost Terror to Condemned before heading up to Final Kefka. Matt also had to deal with Meteo downing multiple party members to recover, while Double Down used Quick on his Valiant Knife user after Fallen 1 to finish the fight first, 133-58 to 135-20 in a photo finish. The last match of the lower bracket had Drewlith face off against Locke with Edgar Health and Mog Tools, and Locke grabbed an experience egg from the Narsh weapon shop with a cursed shield of 14 and a PM Stalker monster in a box fight, grabbing 2 X potions via steal. While Drewlith continued looting other locations, Locke went up to Lone Wolf for Marvel Shoes instead of a gem box. Drewlith picked up an experience egg of his own in World of Ruin South Figaro, and both runners found the Ragnarok in the Coliseum for smoke bombs. With multiple starting characters who could equip them, it was an easy choice to grab a few. With an Illumina on the South Figaro throne and Terra awaiting for them in the engine room, it was a highly physical offensive seed from the get-go. Unfortunately, it was Ifrit and Shiva awaiting Drewlith, so he used a Fire Rod when Shiva came out, while Locke was grinding in the World of Balance South Figaro Cave prior to the Tunnel Armor check, which was a Thunder Shield from Rizopus and the Piranhas, to continue his trend of 4 dead checks in a row. Umaro was awaiting our runners at the Ancient Castle, and Gogo was the reward from Yeti Cave, as both runners had only 1 Esper in this character-heavy seed. Drew picked up a second experience egg from the weapon shop, while Locke found a Valiant Knife in the Sealed Gate Cave that Drewlith had skipped over to go with the offering that he got from Vanilla Katana Soul. In spite of the powerful offense, Locke had lots of trouble keeping his characters alive from getting lots of progression without doing any real grind fights, and his levels were much less than what Drewlith was working with. After getting Realm at Zozo Tower and Gao at Mobliz, our runners still needed more Espers, but found Setzer at Owser's Mansion, who had 2 dead checks that Colin Janin and Search the Skies. While looking for more Espers, both runners went to Daryl's Tomb finding Strago, but neither wanted to take on the Magimaster fight just to get the 3 suboptimal checks. After getting Esper at the Veld and another Marvel Shoes at Serpent Trench, both runners had to go to checks that they'd been putting off all match. This meant that Locke turned to Phoenix Cave and Drewlith turned to Zone Eater to get their last Esper for Go mode in this agonizing Esper hunt. Locke entered at the Kefka's Tower skip first. However, he had problems at the Goddess statue against Inferno that wiped his party once, and he barely scraped by getting 3 lucky Pearl procs from his jumping Mog. This allowed Drewlith to step up to the final fight first, 3 minutes ahead of Locke. Having access to Air Anchor and Mutant Fenrir for the battle, Drewlith was able to breeze through the tiers, while Locke had to deal with magic, spellcasts, and counters, winning with a time of 1:30.50 to 1:34.16. This round also marked the 3rd week of Chupon's Pit, which had the matches using the Gogo's mirror flag set from the previous week. This meant that runners started with Gogo and Mimic, along with all of the commands possibly being in the seed and access to Ultima, but scaling was at party highest level instead of progression based. The first match was Keith McRocks against Verts 505, and the seed gave him Edgar X Magic and Cyan Blitz, along with Ice Shield, Fixed Ice, and Red Cap in the North Shed, and an Experience Egged and Flame Shield in the South Figaro basement. Runners ran up the free progression with Espers at Figaro Throne into Zen Thief, as well as Shock Health Gao after 5 collective bridge troll tosses. Verts grabbed an Esper from the Veld and found Strago at Dome of Siege, but also Goddess for an instant reset, while Keith found the Luminous for sale in World of Ruin Jador prior to going to the auction house, so he instead went to Mount Zozo for more treasure and another Esper, while Verts pivoted back to the Serpent Trench, getting some levels and finding another Esper. Keith followed the Gao checks while Verts went up to Kefka at Narsh, but wiped from a grind fight after getting stoned. Lay off the edible gummies, dude. Eventually getting the Bismarck Esper on the 2nd try, and Keith was able to defeat Goddess to get his 5th character Strago. The runners then leaned hard into the multi-part checks, with Keith going through Cyan's Dream, getting 2 dead checks and a Steel Natural Magic Mog, with Verts heading into the Edgar loop for an Esper that taught Ultima at the Engine Room, Tool's Realm in the Ancient Castle, and an Experience Egg from the Dragon. As the runners high-five with Keith going into the Ancient Castle as Verts was heading out, Verts next also found those Illuminas while doing the Owser's Mansion check, but had Ultima for Realm and Gogo, Shock for Gao, and Imp Dragoon for Edgar, so he didn't need them. Both runners ended up in World of Ruin Jador at the same time, getting 2 Espers, one from Owser's Mansion and the other in the auction house. Keith unlocked his final Kefka at Esper Mountain, while Verts got his 2.5 minutes later at Mount Zozo, but the menu boss was at it again, thus they were nearly synced, fighting against Ultros 3 at the Inferno spot. A couple of good fixed dice rolls for Keith meant that he was able to finish the fight more quickly and was able to take down the French Vanilla Inferno at the Goddess spot, while Verts was taking a dragon for more levels and spells with another Kefka Tower party. The rest of the boss gauntlet gave Keith a 3.5 minute lead in the final Kefka battle, being on tier 2 when Verts stepped on the switches. Access to instant death, mute, Fenrir, and Ultima made this a very fast Kefka fight, and Keith took home the W, 135.09 to 141.34 for Verts. The other Chupon's Pit match had Arusta going up against Shadow Sid with Control Sabin and Natural Magic Runic Realm, with purchasable Warp Stones and Narsh meant going to Zone Eater for Shiva Esper, a Zone Seek Esper from Collapsing House, and Seraphim from the Zen Thief. Arusta also found an Experience Egg in Thamasa, but he ran into Funbaba on the Phantom Train that was too much for his party, so he took a reset, while Shadow Sid found Capture Locke at Esper Mountain, which allowed him to do some more free checks with Ramu at the Narsh Weapon Shop and Shock X Magic Gao at Phoenix Cave. Arusta grabbed an important Esper Golem from Mount Cults after doing some grinding, while Sid took a wipe to Atma, and Arusta had to take another reset to some difficult mobs in the Imperial camp. Sid was able to take down Atma after another try with Steel Terra as the reward. After grabbing Celeste from the sealed gate cave, Sid was able to grab an Esper from Velt and another from the South Figaro prisoner spot, giving him a 2-character and 1 Esper lead over Arusta. But while Sid was grabbing Ragnarok the Sword, Ragnarok the Esper, and the Palador Esper from the auction house, Arusta grabbed an Esper at the Velt and a 6-character Rage Mog from the Serpent Trench. As Sid unlocked Kefka with Fenrir from the Imperial camp as Arusta was heading in. However, Sid was only at level 26, so he needed to accrue more levels prior to going into the final dungeon and battle. This meant that Arusta was able to grab 2 more Espers while Sid turned to the Opera House check. Arusta ran into a few bad checks with Thunder Shield at Barren Falls and Celeste at the Sealed Gate Cave, which allowed Sid to clear out the middle path with an overloaded party to get more levels, getting go mode at the auction house while Sid was fighting a Vanilla Guardian. Arusta split up his party to prevent the multiple walkthroughs that Sid was forced to do, since Arusta had much better levels prior to going into KT, but that experience egg he found at the beginning of the seed, plus a lot less free progression. Sid was able to take down Doomgaze at the Goddess statue with his full party, while Arusta had to reset out, not having the right setup for the fight, which meant he had to do the walk from the Inferno spot. This meant that Sid had a significant lead, especially with calmness protection in the form of Fenrir, advancing with a time of 1:32.05. Of course, we got some great highlights here with the top plays of the round, starting with a lucky break from GB Matt as his confused Terra casted Ice 3 on his entire party, which is normally bad, but luckily there was a Paladin Shield, Ice Shield, and Snow Mufflers to allow all 4 of his party members to absorb the spell like a ShamWow. Next up is a swag strat by Zenobian to shave off some time in the fight against Vargas. This is a speedrun after all, opting to use Pummel to vanquish the foe instantly in vanilla fashion instead of dealing with his mountain of HP. At the bronze medal spot is Fictus, opting to throw up a Hail Mary after doing some #quick maths in using level 4 flare, and it actually connected with 2 of the 4 tentacles. Take that, Mom Spaghetti. The runner-up spot is Locke getting not 1, not 2, but 3 Pearl procs from his jumping Mog user in order to squeak by Inferno at the Goddess statue spot that gave him trouble just the fight before. The top bill is another insane Goddess statue fight against Haydn by Taco Mage, where his realm actually takes an Ultima on the chin, already having queued up Sword Tech 6, her health ticking down due to the sap status, reducing her to 8 HP. Poison Frog actually does 0 damage due to body armor protection and is allowed to get the Empower ability off to heal back up, and eventually it was Zombie Umaro who landed the killing blow, allowing him to move on to Final Kefka. On the flip side of things, it's the top fails, and with Locke always steal, our runners were usually grabbing items off of enemies, but for Boo and Fictus, they had multiple enemies. Ursus and Punisher actually returned the favor by stealing GP from each of their parties. How rude, Stephanie Tanner. Dr. DT's Inferno fight was against the Three Stooges, and Sabin was bullied once by Larry and then twice in a row by Mo. No XP for you. Third spot goes to Madre, who zigged when he should have zagged, getting crushed by the ceiling and Zone Eater. Thankfully, he saved in the prior room. The silver spot goes to Double Down, who just after winning a Coliseum match got back in the airship and immediately ran into Doomgaze, who clobbered 2 of his 3 party members at low levels with a level 5 Doom spell, and it was a reset. Again, thankfully reverting to a save right before getting on the Death Zeppelin. Sense a pattern here? And unfortunately at the top spot is Jexfarok, who had his game crash right after defeating Rexol at Barren Falls, but prior to getting a save as he stepped onto the airship prior to going into his menu, which wasn't nearly as quick the second time around, having Umaro in the party hitting the zingers instead of the real boss. The next round of the Coliseum will feature Strago's Rod, so our runners will get access to Strago with lore and also his checks. Yick. We will start with 6 to 12 lores instead of the usual 3 to 5, add an MP cost between half and full, a plus 10 magic power stat adjustment, along with being able to learn all 24 lores if you complete the Fanatics Tower and Ebbett's Rock checks. Coliseum reward is a set of breakable rods, which are also available in shops that are twice as random with 40% instead of 20%. Shock is available, but X Magic is not, and magic also gets a slight nerf with only 1 or 2 spells learnable on each Esper, but the Espers are multi-summon and cost 50 to 100% of vanilla. I'm expecting to see a lot of opening Burning House plays next week, perhaps to get some levels and spells taught, along with using those breakable rods from the Coliseum in Fanatic's Tower to get all of the lures unlocked if you don't roll as lucky as Falcon hitting Green Monkey, getting both Quasar and Grand Train on the starting lures in their seed. Well, that's it for the round 4 recap. Can't wait to see what exciting things our runners get into next round of the Coliseum, as the Gladiators are starting to get whittled down, with the finals of Chupon's Pit and only 4 left in the upper bracket. I've been TheShwantz27. Until next time.